Have you ever wondered why your favorite League of Legends team lost despite having a winning draft? Does it not bother you how the teams you cheer for screw up your prediction rate in big tournaments like the ongoing mid-season cup? Well, say no more, because today we'll be going over the draft theory of how good drafts fail in competitive settings. The Mid-Season Cup is an international event between the top 4 teams from China and Korea participating in a tournament format similar to the Mid-Season Invitational, also known as MSI, which was supposed to take place right around this time had it not been for the recent COVID-19 pandemic. While I was spectating the games of this tournament, I realized that a lot of the teams were losing despite having better drafts than their opponents. This is a big issue when it comes to facilitating the pick and bans, because there are cases when the losing team will believe that their draft was the issue, when in reality the execution from the side of the players was what cost them the game. And the opposite can also be applied to the winning team with the unfavorable draft. They could continue to believe the illusion that they built a good draft since they were able to win from it, and not take the steps to improve on a draft that in reality was pretty garbage. So how exactly are teams losing with better drafts? Well, the obvious answer will be based on how the teams approach the compositions they built and the individual execution of each player. For this video, I will use FPX's draft against T1 from the Mid-Season Cup as an example. To begin with, let's analyze the entirety of the pick and ban phase. FPX starts by banning a lot of the strong meta champions from the previous patches, Set, Trundle, and Ornn. T1 surprisingly banned out the Graves and Elise, most likely to target FPX's Tian's champion pool, but this would leave other OP champions like Senna, Kalista, and Syndra open for grabs. The Varus ban here is good because he is a strong blind pick at the moment with the poke style lethality build. FPX decides to open with a blue side first pick with the Aphelios. Not the best choice, but certainly not the worst it can be, since LWX seems to see Aphelios as a comfort pick for him. T1 responds to the Aphelios by picking Kalista, a flex pick that can go either top or ADC. This was a very good choice from T1 as it allows them to conceal their actual positions until the end of the draft phase. Olaf then gets picked by T1, which is an odd choice considering that Olaf has clear weaknesses in his kit. Mainly the need for him to be at melee range to the enemy to be able to do anything, which leaves him vulnerable to a lot of compositions that can deal with his hard engage. In this case, FPX decides to lock in the Kindred. They also decide to pick Karma, which is a new sort of flex pick that can be ran in 3 positions, top, mid, and support. Karma is also very good in this scenario because she can empower the Aphelios and the Kindred with her shields, slows, and overall utility. At this point, T1 is suffering from a lack of range to deal with the 3 champions FPX has picked, and they certainly do not have the burst or CC to take FPX down cleanly. So what do T1 do? They lock in the Jace in the top lane. Now, this signifies that T1 will essentially play to stomp the early game with the amount of lane pressure Jace and Kalista have over their counterparts, and Olaf can assist them to do that even better. FPX knows T1 needs to play the early game, lane kingdom style, hence they banned away the Taric and Thresh to not give the Kalista extra levels of power and synergy. T1 bans Irelia and Wukong since they believe that those champions can be problematic for the Jace. Next up, T1 picks Gragas, which is a very good choice from them for 2 reasons. One is his synergy as a champion with Kalista due to the body slam and natural tankiness. And 2 is his ultimate, the Explosive Cask, that can displace people away from the Kindred ultimate, leaving them vulnerable to getting killed. FPX then responds with a support pick of their own with the Nautilus, and interestingly enough, the Nautilus can be flexed here to the mid lane thanks to Doinby being one of the few mid laners in the entire world to be able to play AP mid Nautilus. After seeing the first 4 picks from T1, FPX decides to give their top laner Vladimir. Now the Vladimir here is extremely scary for T1 due to his burst and slipperiness in mid to late game teamfights, which would mean that T1 has to play towards getting those early advantages and transitioning them into meaningful objectives. But they go ahead and finalize their draft with the Corki, who ideally wants his first and second item power spikes before helping his team out. So the logic of picking Corki in this case would be for the scaling power he gives without actually enabling the rest of T1's team comp. And now that we look at the entirety of the pick and bans, what can we immediately notice from here? I want you to pay attention to the Vladimir. Do you see any champion from T1's side that can disrupt the Vladimir from dealing large amounts of AoE damage in teamfights? The short answer would be no. Vladimir's full combo, in which he flashes in with his ultimate and pulls under with his E-charge, is almost impossible to stop without reliable peel, crowd control, or sustain, all of which T1 do not possess. In fact, T1 wants to get into the face of FPX to deal damage due to their short range and hopefully come ahead in the teamfights, but FPX with the Karma and the Kindred basically inhibits T1's win conditions in the mid to late game where objectives start to matter a lot more. So, this becomes very problematic for T1 since it places them on a timer. They have to either get ahead in lane with the Jace and the Kalista, or secure a CS advantage, or get some turret plays or early dragons, and hope that they can snowball their leads to victory. The problem with that though, is Olaf and Corki are not necessarily the best champions to form team comps that can snowball early. These two champions would much rather farm things out and wait for their item power spikes to actually be useful. But Kalista and Jace definitely do not want to wait that long to get advantages in the laning phase. One good thing for T1 though is that if the game goes even, Jace and Corki are much better side laners than Vladimir and Karma, so they can definitely use this advantage to trade for objectives in later stages of the game. However, that is much easier said than done, and it will require T1 to play much better than FPX to get those early leads and to be able to side lane efficiently against a Kindred that will continue to get stacks on her passives, hence their draft is heavily based on execution rather than having answers to FPX's draft. T1's only saving grace in teamfights would be the Gragas, since he can displace people with his ultimate, or side laning with stronger solo laners, but other than that, T1 realistically have no chance at actually winning a teamfight since they get outscaled later. What is asked of FPX to win this game is to not let T1 press their lane priorities to get early dragons, because if they do, a 20-minute soul buff would be very problematic for FPX's draft, so Kindred's pathing will be very crucial in this case. If T1 forces a fight around the jungle or take pre-15-minute Rift Heralds, then FPX should try to respond to the aggression in a manner where they do not lose as many resources, since time is in their favor. If FPX manages to weather the storm in the early stages of the game, they are set to win every teamfight onwards and lead themselves to victory. But of course, that is not how it went down, and that is why I needed to make this video to explain in detail how FPX fumbled their superior draft to defeat. So let's get into the game and analyze what exactly went wrong. Actually, FPX played the first 10 minutes of the game spectacularly well. They did not let either Jace or Kalista get driven the CS leads or turret plates, they did not concede the first Rift Herald, and most importantly, no one has died from FPX. T1 only managed to get a 600 gold lead. If the game continues to play out in this state where T1 is unable to press their early priority in top and bot lane to attain meaningful advantages, FPX will be able to contest for the upcoming dragons after the 20-minute mark when Vladimir, Kindred, and Aphelios all hit their 2-3 item power spikes. To add even more icing on the cake, FPX turned a collapse onto TN's Kindred into a 2-for-1 trade, evening the gold lead further.
Is going to be enough to get him to safety. That looked like an unsealed spellbook heal coming out from Doinby, full health, and now the return. But in goes Teddy and his support, able to pick up the first blood in the back line. But Doinby and the rest of FPX on the chase. Did they go too deep is the real question here. As Teddy is going to be locked down, effort will go down here. Faker over the wall, trying to help him out, but there's that turret, and now the visual is going to come out. That's a lot of damage, but no lockdown. It looks like the mobility of Kalista and the Corki will be able to get them out of dodge, but that's a 2-for-1 in kills going the way of FPX.
It all looked sunshine and flowers for FPX until they decided to fight 3 versus 4 in the river after attempting to steal away the dragon. FPX do not have the tools to fight that aggressively at this stage of the game, not against Callista or Olaf, and especially when they are outnumbered. Due to their reckless aggression, FPX give 3 kills over to the Callista, who wants to snowball with her early leads. But somehow, Teddy thought it was okay to solo push the bot turret without any support from his team, and he gives 600 shutdown gold to the Aphelios. This game is already turning into a big clown fiesta where neither team is playing towards their win conditions properly. But we see time and time again that FPX wants to force the aggressive hand when they don't have to, so they end up committing terrible mistakes that will increase the time to get to their power spikes while giving T1 the gold and experience to slowly gain control of the early game. I will now count the number of times FPX recklessly engage or commit a mechanical mistake with this clown symbol.
They're not going to sit back and make the same play. They want to get as much value as possible, and here we go. They get the turret, but having gone too deep as Chris is going to go down. The Kindred ultimate is too late, Porky, so you don't, okay, we're not poking, we're just going straight into the backline, and LWX just disappears as Tiana's going to be late on the ultimate once again. The burst coming in now from the chase is going to be enough, and this is going to be an easy cleanup for T1. As Cuz, though, is going to have to use that heal to get out of dodge here. Khan running straight into it, and Faker coming back in with the teleport. Should be able to take out Khan here as he is under that turret, but he does not have the pool any longer. It's Faker. They're going a little bit too deep after getting the win on. Make it, extremely sure to everybody that he is the one that's going to be making the plays, as Khan wants to try to rival that here, as he is going to have to flash away. But do they have the damage to follow it up here? Finally, the Kindred ultimate is going to come in on time, but there it is. The huge burst damage comes out from Effort, and that's going to be the cast. The menace from the support, as you mentioned, is going to have the damage as T1 will look to push in.
I think the nail in the coffin was when FPX misplayed around the mid lane. From what I saw, Faker's Corki inted straight into Aphelios and Karma, who would have killed him had the Kindred flashed over the wall on time to prevent the burst from killing Aphelios. It was an unfortunate misplay from FPX, but the way they were playing their team comp after the 10-minute mark just showed that it isn't the style they are familiar with, considering how most of the Chinese teams play towards fighting all day, all night. T1 obtaining the Infernal Soul there would make it extremely difficult for FPX to fight for Baron or any other additional objectives on the map, since they no longer have the luxury to scale for additional items. Oh, and one more clown to finish the game.
As Doinbe not even going to be able to save his life. Will they? Look at how fast Baker is. He's going to go in, pick up the kill, and Baker will get out alive. Gragas is going to give his life, and that's going to be the end of the game. GG, as T1 will pick up the first game here of the mid-season cup. As FPX did put on a pretty nice show, especially in the early game. I liked how proactive they were. But T1 is making it clear that the predictions that a lot of the casters did make is probably what is going to happen. T1 looked to be the favorite coming out of this group by far.
Yeah, I mean, game number 1, dominant.